Good evening and welcome to the Monday, May 13 Muscatine School District Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, can you please take roll and help us determine the quorum, please?
Yes. Director Connard.
Present.
Cooney.
Present.
DeBeat.
Present.
LaRue.
Present.
Phillips. Present. Schneider. Present. Shore.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance led by Lynn Hines, first grade class at Jefferson Elementary School. Please stand. What a treat. Thank you. Appreciate that. First of all, on behalf of the school board, I would like to welcome all our visitors and media representatives. And also, among our visitors here, I see an amazing individual with us, our former school board president, Tammy Droba. Tammy, it's always good to see you around with us. Thank you. So with that, we move into our next item, the public hearing to amend the FY24 budget. Can we have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call, please?
Directors Connard.
Aye.
Cooney.
Aye.
DeBeat.
Aye.
LaRue.
Aye.
Phillips. Aye. Schneider.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
All ayes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, did we have any oral comments?
We did not receive any.
Did we have any written comments? No. Anybody around the table have any question? Okay, thank you. If we don't have any comments or questions here, can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I'll make the motion to close.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Directors Connard.
Aye.
Cooney.
Aye.
DeBeat.
Aye.
LaRue.
Aye.
Phillips. Aye. Schneider.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
All ayes.
Thank you. With that, we move into the Student School Board Representative Report. Trey, all yours.
Good evening, everybody. So as the school year winds down, students are getting ready for finals. This past week, we celebrated Happiness Week, which is something the school puts on. So there's a bunch of theme days. There's popcorn, for instance, during Muskie time, and there's other things that are given out to students during Muskie time. That's all for Happiness Week. So we had some state qualifiers for track and tennis. Tennis, Ryan Kirkpatrick qualified for state. And then as far as track goes, there were plenty of relay teams that qualified, and it would take me a real long time to list them off. Girls soccer and boys soccer both have sub-state starting soon. The girls sub-state game is actually going on right now at the stadium. Hopefully, weather permitting, it keeps going. For girls golf, we actually had one girls golfer who won the MAC this year, Riley Brockhouse. She's only a freshman. She'll compete at districts to get to state on Wednesday. The first baseball game is tomorrow, and that's against Solon. That'll be the first game at the stadium, so the players are real excited for that. And then finally, the FFA plant sale will be May 17th. So there'll be a bunch of plants for sale in the greenhouse at Muscatine High School. That's all.
Thank you. Any question for Trey? Anybody?
Well, we want to say thank you to Trey. Tonight is his last board meeting with us. You've done a great job representing students in the high school. We appreciate the time. Tell us what your plans are for next year.
I'm going to Iowa State, and I'll be majoring in business.
Well, please join me in giving Trey a round of applause. We have just a little appreciation award that we'll give to you. You also get to keep your little name. Now, not the holder, right?
Yes.
Just the little slide out thing, but
Whole thing.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
You get the whole thing. Wow, that's awesome. So, with that, congratulations. I think. Again, thanks for all you've done.
Thank you, Trey. So moving forward, we move into citizen speaks. If anyone in the audience wants to address the board, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Per Iowa code, we cannot respond or engage in any discussion during the board meeting. That doesn't mean you cannot communicate with us outside the board meeting via emails or phone calls and so on. So please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Go. My name is Lori Luzinski. I live on Sweetland Road. I've had numerous kids go through Muscatine Community School District. First, I wanted to acknowledge this incredible board and all of the dedication, all of the unpaid time, everything they do, and all of the staff. I see finance, I see student support, I see everybody here that works together to make it a really good school district, and so these kids can have the best send-off into the world they can. That said, my apologies to Kim Schneider and to also Lindsay Phillips for having, and also Clint, for having listened to me harp on this again. I know you spent a whole bunch of money on Susan Clark, and I get it, it needed it, but my daughter graduated in '01, and she became a music major with a trumpet major at UNI and a double major with psychology, which she found out qualifies you to say, would you like fries with that? But she became a music therapist at the University of Iowa and then went on to get a master's in mental health counseling. That said, it was fine arts and band and that she went to and was her love. She did drum corps between her junior and senior year and also between her senior and freshman year at UNI. It was a great basis. It supplied the discipline that she needed when at orientation, the person doing the presentation said, look to your right, look to your left. In 4 years, one of those kids will be gone. That struck her really hard. Fine arts was her grounding, even though she's a mental health counselor. It doesn't leave you, and I really encourage you in this new renovation of the auditorium at the old high school. This is dating me. My kids would think I graduated during the Renaissance. That's not true. But please make sure that you don't underfund this, because between the time my daughter graduated in '01 and the time my son graduated in 2013, both were trumpet players, both were band kids, there was almost no improvements other than a few practice rooms. So we're throwing $6 million at a field that gets used 4 months of the year, as opposed to an auditorium that's year-round. So please consider carefully how you spend all the money, and I know that it gets old hearing me harp on it. Also, at the community conversation, we discussed the incredible presentation by the ROTC dad. I guess he was military, but I really encourage us, let's get this community moving to getting an ROTC program. I did some research. It's an incredible program. So maybe we can, and it was suggested that we get our senators interested. Let's go do it, even if we all sign petitions to get ROTC coming here and getting it going. So 8 seconds left. I did pretty well.
Thank you, Lori. Anybody else would like to address the board? Okay, well, thank you. Moving forward, we move to next item, board targets and goals report. Item A, students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Item B, Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably. And item C, students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. Under this item, we have 2 presentations tonight. So we'll start with the first one, ELA adoption, grade 6 to 8.
Good evening. Tonight we're going to be presenting on 2 different adoptions. The first one is our ELA adoption, and our second one will be the social studies adoption. Let me get this clicker here. So tonight for the ELA adoption, Rachel Fallon and Melissa Shoemaker will be walking you through, and I should be calling it the readoption of ELA. So as you guys may remember, last year we went through a K-12 ELA adoption, and soon after that adoption completed, and we ordered materials, set up professional development, we were notified that the 6 through 8 springboard was going under, and so would not be able to continue to be able to support us in that adoption. So we brought back the 6th through 8th grade teachers again, and they went all the way back through this curriculum adoption process together as a team. And I just really want to take a few minutes to thank them, because going through one adoption is very challenging on top of what they're already doing, but to go through it a second time is even more time consuming. And challenging, but I do want to thank them for all of the work that they put into this. So I'm going to kind of let them talk through the process that they went through, and then at the end we'll have time for questions.
Hi, I'm Rachel Fallon. I teach 8th grade ELA, and so I'm the 7th and 8th grade middle school representative from Susan Clark.
This is Melissa Shoemaker. I'm a 6th grade teacher at Grant Elementary.
So we piloted 2 curriculums, Amplify ELA and Into Literature, which were both rated highly on edreports.org. And we started the Amplify pilot right after winter break, and then we went into Lit right around spring break. And we've just been really busy piloting both of those curriculums. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, so before before winter break, all teachers received training on Amplify. And for Amplify, we actually only had access to online materials for that curriculum. And then for Into Lit, we started the pilot in March, and we had both access to print and online materials there for that pilot. Pilot teachers engaged in ongoing training and support. We had a lot of periodic check-ins from curriculum representatives. We even had an Amplify representative do walkthroughs in our rooms and give us some feedback on how we were doing with piloting that specific curriculum. So we had quite a bit of training and lots of different check-in points meetings with curriculum specialists to help us navigate the online tools and to just get a better understanding of what the curriculums offer. And then some of our admin or building leaders did some walkthroughs to ensure fidelity. And so we just had a lot of conversations and a lot of learning around those two curriculums specifically.
So we started with Amplify, as she said, right after winter break, and we did that for 6 weeks, and then after we were finished with that, we moved right into HMH, which 6th grade actually did a pilot of HMH last year when we were doing the pilot the year before. So it was kind of a multiple pilot for the 6th grade teachers. So we met quite a few times. We met twice, I think, with the middle school. 6th grade met with the middle school teachers, and we went over all the things that we saw that we liked, the things that we didn't like. They were able to meet with some high school teachers to talk about HMH, and we actually had a moment where we could meet with virtually with some Central DeWitt teachers who were doing Amplify, and asked them some questions, and that was really informative. That really gave us a lot of information that we wanted to try to make a decision. There were pros and cons of both, and it was not an easy decision for any of us. And as a matter of fact, I think every time we got together, we thought we knew what we wanted. Every grade level thought they knew what they wanted, and then they would flip-flop the next time and say they wanted something different. So yeah, there was a lot of different things. I would say from the 6th grade perspective, some of the things that we really were leaning away from with Amplify was there seemed to be a lot of online component. So we felt like the kids were really on their screens a lot when we were doing that. And part of that was we didn't have the print materials because they were really expensive to purchase for just a pilot. So we didn't have some of those print materials. We had to just do the virtual part of it. But part of it was just that there just seems to be a lot of it that involves online learning. Some of the text was extremely complicated. We thought we were doing something really cool when we selected the Greek mythology to do as our pilot, and that turned out to be not a great idea because those Greek myths that they have in Amplify were very high level reading, and almost to the point where some of the kids were getting frustrated and just were not connecting, disengaging from the learning. So that was one of the things that we didn't love about Amplify. There were some good components about Amplify. There was a lot of different vocabulary was really strong in Amplify. But in the end, 6th grade was more comfortable with the HMH. HMH came with some really fantastic reading novels, studies that were around books like The Giver and A Long Walk to Water and Holes, and these books that kids really enjoy to read at that age. Also, one of the really big highlights for 6th grade with the HMH was that after they would do a reading at the end of that section or that lesson, they had 3 options of how to show their learning, which they could do a report, like oral report, they could do a written report, and there were even options for them to create a blog. There were options for them to create a portrait or a poster to show their learning. So we loved that there was a lot of options for kids that learn in different levels to show their learning. So in the end, we decided HMH was probably the best fit for us.
Yeah, so 7th and 8th grade, we were pretty divided. 7th grade really loved the Amplify curriculum, and 8th grade really liked IntelliLit. And we went back and forth a lot as well. Some of the things we really liked about Amplify, there was a lot of writing practice, and we really felt like our students did improve on writing. But for teacher usability, it was not super friendly. The layout, the pathway wasn't very clear to us. And we had a lot of challenges with using some of the online components, which even if we went with that curriculum, we would still be using online components. And even when I had one of the curriculum representatives in my room, she could see how much it was lagging, and we don't really know why that is, but that created some frustration, and I think maybe there was a little bit of bias there, but there are things that we liked about Amplify, and we tried to kind of go into the next curriculum pilot with more of a level head. And then when we piloted HMH, there were just so many resources available for teachers, available for scaffolding, available for enriching learning, and like Melissa said, there was a lot of voice and choice with some of the end of unit tasks, so it wasn't always necessarily an essay or a speech, although we know that primarily in ALA we're going to focus on those skills, but there were just more opportunities for students to demonstrate learning in a different way, and for some students at a higher level. And then overall, HMH provided kind of more of a teacher wrap, gave more instructions to teachers about what strategies to use. There were things called signposts so that students could really work on the skill of annotating. So there were, pros and cons to both of those. I would say Amplify was a little bit stronger in building to writing, but then IntelliLit just had so many materials to enrich. I even found myself after the pilot was over, I'm like, oh, I think HMH has a tool I can use for this, or there's maybe a lesson I can use in HMH to help bolster their, adverbs or verbs, whatever it is we were learning. And so ultimately we went with HMH for that reason. The majority of the resources are great on HMH. It was very user-friendly, and we felt like most of the students were a bit more engaged when we used that curriculum.
And Writable, too. Writable is a program that we've used this year, actually, and Writable is an HMH product, so that made it really convenient that everything was preloaded and in there, and they really coincide really well together, so that was another bonus. So we did surveys with the teachers and students. It was very half and half. It was very close, so it didn't make a decision either one way or the other any easier for us. So anyway, our final selection was HMH.
I think this is our final selection process. This was the protocol we followed. And so basically, all teachers were invited to sit at the table. And, you know, Joelle helped us out with this, trying to get us to consensus. And for the most part, we had already met a couple times. We knew where people stood with the curriculums. We just had some final discussions on, okay, are we all comfortable with this? Are we going with HMH? We had a few teachers that are like, oh, I don't know yet, I don't know. And then we got everybody on board with that decision, and everyone's comfortable with it. We're getting some work time, I think, over the summer. I know 7th and 8th grade are gonna be working on Wednesday with getting the layout of the curriculum and understanding what each unit is for. So definitely, I think everybody was a team player and got on board with the decision, and everyone feels good about it.
Yeah, and has some first steps to take. I know we've thought about focusing on the assessments that we need to look at. Some of the assessments are really long, but they're all editable, and they're all things that we can go in and kind of look at together as a group. So it was a good process. Questions?
Okay, good presentation. I enjoy it because I always like to see the pros and cons, you know, on things. But I'm going to go back to the Ed Reports page where it shows the two different ones. And just kind of wanted to make sure if I've got this correctly, because in other words, through that .org or somebody had done it, because like, for example, in Amplify, and the test quality, it was 36 of 36, but then you go to the usability, it goes down to 32, 34. So in other words, is that like a users, as in how many actually liked what the information was, or is that something about the number of components that are within that area?
So the curriculums were rated on each of these things. Usability is just how it's set up for teachers and how it ties into like all the different standards, the text. It's just scored on 3 different levels.
Yeah, on a whole, that they both looked like that they had, as you said, good components with them. It just kind of seemed interesting because the Amplify actually looked like it had a little bit higher score, so to speak, you know, and then as I hear you talking on there, that how you felt that you really liked how the intro to lit works. And so that's why you have to have these kind of things going on so you can feel really comfortable with it.
And I would say, I know the numbers up here are fairly close when you're looking at those, but they both scored green on Ed Reports, which is a very high score. And we had gone through this adoption process the year before, and obviously our high school chose Into Lit, our elementary chose CKLA with Amplify. So we had done quite a bit of extensive research on the 2 programs already, which is why we ended up choosing those 2 as well, again.
Okay, thank you.
Rachel and Melissa, first of all, thank you for a great presentation. I have a quick question. Like you did, Rachel, mention that I think 7th grade, they really lean towards more Amplify more than HMH. Do we know the reasons why? Do you know? I mean, if you can share some.
Yeah, so they chose a really fun unit called Poe and Poetry. And when we talked to DeWitt, they said that was a really engaging unit. And 8th grade did a Holocaust unit. And I really liked some of the pieces that were selected for 8th grade too. But some of their reasoning was they liked the layout of it. They liked the build to the end. They felt that that was very clear. I think it just came down to 8th grade did not get the clarity, and 7th grade did get the clarity in terms of the unit. I think initially, the 7th grade teachers were a bit apprehensive about Amplify, but when they really got into it and started using it, they liked the questions that were posed. They liked some of the different skills that were focused on in the lessons or subunits. That was part of what we had to get used to with some of the different lingo of each curriculum, like subunits or activities or lessons. What are we doing exactly? They did say, though, that they felt the vocabulary was a little bit weak in Amplify. And Amplify also has these things called flex days, where you can kind of pause and you can sort your students into groups, so you can have students working on different skills, which is great in theory, but then when we went to implement it, it didn't kind of work as well as we thought it might. And then we found that IntelliT had something very similar. You could create groups, you could assign things specifically to individual groups of students to create that same differentiated experience.
Thank you. Go ahead.
What are the costs associated with these, the different costs of these?
So, of course, I did not have my proposal sheet in front of me. I am going to be bringing that to you in June. CKLA Amplify was a little bit more expensive than IntelliT, but they were
Similar in cost?
Similar.
Anything from Springboard then getting money back from what we spent? Or how does that?
I still have their bills.
Okay.
Okay. We haven't paid them. That's what Tom said. I'm
Paying
just
for
holding.
services not received. It's good that we haven't paid. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Joel, I think this one might be for you too. So IntelliT, the stakeholders viewed that last year for the 6 to 8, but we didn't view Amplify, right?
It is CKLA. It's the same as what K5 is using.
So, but I mean, it wasn't like sent out to view for people for 6 through 8. So do you just go online if you want to view that at all? Or?
Yeah, you can go. Yes, you can go online. I can send a link out to you as well. Because we had it all out up there, we didn't do it again. But definitely,
Oh, was
I can
6 to
provide
8
that.
out?
It
Did we
should have
already
been
see it?
out. The K-12 should have been out, or K-8 should have been out upstairs, and the IntelliT was out because we actually piloted it.
Right. I remember. Okay.
But I can definitely send you the link too if you want to, or parents can, reach out and I can send it.
Any more questions about the ELA adoption? Well, thank you again, Melissa and Rachel. And I think, Joel, you are staying there, right? Because we want to move
I am
into
actually not.
the social studies,
I've
right?
delegated all of social studies, so I'm just going to sit in this little
Okay.
chair and listen to these great people. We have a very large team because we did complete a K-12 adoption with social studies, and I wanted to make sure that they all could share their experience. So.
Good evening. I'm Leslie Bennett. I serve as the principal at Grant Elementary, and I had the privilege of assisting and working with this wonderful team that underwent the social studies, the process for curriculum adoption. So I am going to introduce to you the committee members that served on this team. So obviously, Joelle McConaughey, Lainey Berry played a very big role in this process as the curriculum specialist. Heather Knoll. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Heather Knoll, kindergarten at Madison. Melissa Ramsey, kindergarten at Jefferson. Brenda Todd, 3rd grade at Jefferson. Stacy Beatty, 6th grade at Jefferson. Kayla Quirant, 7th and 8th grade at Susan Clark. Rachel Hansen, department chair at Muscatine High School. Myself as the elementary representative for principal at Grant. Jen Fridley from Susan Clark, and Andy Whirling as the assistant principal from Muscatine High School. So I'm going to turn it over to these guys because they did all the hard work and really dug in to both curriculums and again talk about the pros and the cons as well as their recommendation.
curriculum adoption. You've seen it many times. We shared it when we first presented to the board about the options for social studies curriculum. So we started with phase 1 in October, and we are now at phase 5. These folks are going to talk to you about each phase in more detail here. But today we're here to provide a recommendation to the board after our pilot, and I'm going to make sure to thank the teachers that put a lot of hard work into piloting the curriculums, into providing feedback, many meetings, many trainings. We were here till 6:15, 6:30 trying to decide on our curriculum recommendations, so they put a lot of time and effort. I want to make sure to recognize that because that's the important. I just do little things behind the scenes and they do the real hard work in the classroom. I want to make sure to acknowledge that. So today we are here to share our final recommendations with you. After the meeting tonight, we will proceed, hopefully, to phase 6 of the plan. Our first scheduled professional learning will take place on August 19th. It's already been planned. And then we will have time all throughout the school year on our in-service days for more trainings. Now I'm going to turn it over to Brenda next.
Hello, I am Brenda Todd. I teach 3rd grade at Jefferson. The first thing we did was we reviewed the curriculum adoption process. We reviewed the best practices in social studies. It's an instruction and draft evidence guide that kind of helps you how you saw like the ed report scores. We kind of did that with the different curriculums that we looked at. And then we interacted with the draft evidence guide and the criteria used to evaluate the curricular resources.
All right, so our next step was to go ahead and complete that research component of our curriculum. We were given, I believe, 4, possibly 5 different curricula to research and all of the materials that we needed for that. We were able to go through using those criterion. There were 6 criterion that we were considering as we reviewed, and we were able to provide feedback to kind of guide our decision making. There were rubrics that we used based on those 6 criterion. And from that, we were able to select which units that we wanted to pilot from there.
Phases 3 and 4, the plan for the pilot. The pilot teachers receive training for each pilot prior to implementing. Online and print materials were provided for each teacher and student. Pilot teachers were engaged in ongoing training and support throughout the implementation, and walkthroughs were conducted by leadership in the building.
So in phase 5, we arrived at a final selection of our resources. So this was after running 2 full 6-week pilots, collecting another round of scoring from all of the teachers who went through all 6 of those criteria and carefully, on every single one, weighed both of the pilot curriculum so that they could make a recommendation. At the high school level for us, we had 5 different teachers involved in this pilot, spanning our economics course, our US history course, and our government course. And they also met closely together to try to get consensus before we then came here to the board office to kind of compile feedback from teachers, feedback from students and survey data, and then talk with our colleagues, K-8, about what would make a logical progression of learning.
Similarly, at the middle school, we also took a look 7 and 8. All of us teach both 7 and 8 social studies currently, and so we were in pretty much daily communication of things that we liked, things that we didn't like, and we were, ranking them based on the criterion we were given, but also on student feedback. We gave our students surveys so that we could see how they felt about the 2 different things that we piloted and get their feelings on them as well.
Hello, Stacy Beatty, 6th grade at Jefferson.
So phase 6 is the final request of implementation and communication of the plan. And our first step is recommending it to all, or sharing our recommendations to all stakeholders. So obviously we're starting with you tonight, and you'll see those in just a second. And then, like Lainey mentioned, our implementation plan for the year, because we don't just plop this in teachers' hands and say, here you go, you know, be successful. There's a lot of support throughout the way. We were fortunate, all 3 companies that we're looking at have very strong customer service and have been very quick with when we have had questions and asking for more information. They've been very fast to get that information to us, or to create it for us in a couple instances where they haven't had something we've asked for or wanted to see, and they made it happen. So we were very fortunate to have that involvement from those individual companies. So throughout all of next year, like Eleni said, starting in August, we'll have that training, but it will continue throughout the whole year. Especially at the elementary level, the new social studies standards haven't been graded yet, so next year will be the first time those students and families see it on the actual report card. And so it'll be ongoing training for those standards and the scoring of them, and making sure that our families and community are aware of what's happening in the social studies world. So here are the recommendations.
All right, so our final recommendation was for K-5 to adopt the Inquire Ed through the inquiry journeys. We thought that there was a really rigorous program that met all of the standards that we are teaching currently, and it is very inquiry-based. It was very engaging for our students as well. It gave us a lot of flexibility as far as the online format went, and it aligns really well with our CKLA units, which is a really great thing. So we'll be able to do some work within both of those curricula. Inquire Ed helps students build deep knowledge and skills through investigation, instruction, and experience. Each unit culminates with a student-directed informed action activity. So that is kind of a big project that the kids will be able to experience as we wrap up those units.
I'll add that Inquiry Ed had really great training. They were very patient with us. They walked us through. We met with them 3 times and had online training, and they could answer anytime we had a question. They were fast. They were like all over whatever we needed. So they were really great to work with.
And I'll add that for kindergarten, when we were using the Inquire Ed, there was like a lot of vocabulary that was the same with our CKLA. So the kids were already, they already knew a lot of vocab. So now we can spend some time this summer too, taking some of the Inquire Ed and kind of plugging that into the CKLA and trying to hook it all together.
So at the 6-8 level, we looked at both TCI and Traverse, and we have really strongly leaned towards Traverse from Imagine Learning. Our department felt that it was much more engaging for our students. It had a lot more interactives. It had very strong visuals, which when you're talking about world history or US history, sometimes those visuals are what really help the kids make it come alive and help them actually kind of get a little bit more engaged in it. And each chapter at the end of Traverse has an inquiry where the kids are digging into multiple primary sources and documents and doing various things, whether it's creating a speech, or maybe they're doing a simulation, or they're creating a poster, or so they're practicing all these skills, but they're also doing it in various different ways. And so for us, that was the biggest thing, whereas we felt TCI was a little bit more repetitive, as well as not as easily digestible for our students when it came to readings and other things.
At
the 9-12 level, we were also looking at both Traverse and TCI, just like the 6-8. Traverse was incredibly engaging and a completely digital-facing curriculum, but for us, it came with a lot of bugs and a lot of problems. It's brand new to the social studies curriculum scene, and we're really appreciative of Tristan Toll and Scott Comstock, who did a lot of work trying to help us get that working. Students found it engaging, but in the end, it lacked a lot of the components of a complete curriculum that we were desiring for our teachers and our students. For example, one of the major shortcomings in Traverse on our end was that there was no way for us to make adjustments or modifications for students who were on IEPs or 504s or our English learners who might have needed materials printed. Our high school set didn't come with any kind of print materials or ability to print. And for us, TCI, the Social Studies Alive curriculum for econ, government, and U.S. history, also, like Traverse, focused on inquiry, but for us just did it in a much more packaged and ready curriculum to meet teachers where they were, to provide unit plans and lesson plans, 3 differentiated tracks for students, and also really compelling questions for students to dig into, where they can do document analysis, they can do the work of historians and of economists, and dig into engaging and interactive materials. So for us, that was more student ready, it was more teacher ready, and had a great diversity of assessments, whether they're formative checks along the way or summative ones at the end. And so Social Studies Alive was our recommendation for all 3 of our cores at the high school. We also were in need of purchasing a new AP psychology textbook. So in the world of advanced placement, everything in the course operates off of something called the CED, which is the course and exam description. So that CED outlines a certain set of textbooks that teachers can choose to teach from to prepare students for the test, and we are required to choose something from their list. We've been working with the gold standard since we started offering AP Psychology back in 2014. That's the Myers Psychology, and that textbook has served us really well for 10 years, but it is no longer going to make the cut for the CED. So this year, psychology is getting a modification to their course for the AP course, and with that comes a new edition of the textbook, the 4th edition. We tried out another publisher, Pearson, which is now Savas, but in the end, it made much more sense to stick with kind of the current gold standard in AP Psychology, and that allows us to kind of continue the great curriculum that we've already got and just continue it with this kind of new update to the course that they're getting this year. And with that, I think we move into questions, and I won't answer all of them, but I'm happy to start if you have some for me.
I have a question here that, since we have 3 different curriculum and 3 different publishers, how's the vertical articulation from 5th grade to 6th grade, 8th grade to 9th grade? Is it pretty seamless?
I can speak a bit to it, and then maybe you might want to add. One of the through lines that we looked at in everything was that it kept inquiry at the center, and some of the really important skills in primary and secondary source analysis and just disciplinary historical literacy. So Inquire Ed, Traverse, and TCI all have a really strong through line in inquiry, which is the inquiry arc kind of looks over all of the social studies standards. So for our social studies standards in the state, students have to be able to develop a compelling question, to gather research on it, and then to come up with a really compelling response to that question. And that kind of informs every different discipline at every grade level K-12. And so all of the curriculums that we chose to pilot had that through line. And so in the end, I think we had this really long discussion that lasted until 6:15 about do we need to all get on board with one? First, we can't, because K-12, they weren't all available. Like Inquire Ed, we can't, that's not a high school curriculum. It only goes until the 5th grade. And we wanted to keep, I guess, inquiry at the core. I'll turn it over to Stacy maybe.
Yeah, the social studies is a little bit different in that it's broken up by themes. So like the 6th grade theme is world geography and 5th grade is U.S. historical documents. And so we may cover similar topics, like in 6th grade we do the Holocaust, but we do it on how population changed because of the Holocaust and how the geography of countries actually changed. Where in 8th grade, they're approaching it more from the government and U.S. history aspect of it. So we may cover similar topics, but we're approaching it through different standards. So it actually works well when the kids have that background knowledge to connect to. So social studies isn't quite the same as math, where you have to be very cautious of exactly what you're saying. Where social studies, that background kind of builds on each other, so it's a little bit more conducive to, it's okay to talk about the Holocaust 3 times because you're approaching it from different aspects and different standards. And that's, 6th grade, we kind of didn't mention in the adoption process because it was a kind of a different beast. There's not really a 6th grade curriculum that meets what we need. And Joelle was kind enough to say that we could go off on our own and do 1 year different, and that was the exact reason that we said no. We want that consistency. Kids are already transitioning and learning new things. At least let them have the same 6, 7, 8, so they're not going something different 5, different 6, different 7, and then different 9. So that was one of the determining factors in what 6th grade ended up going with.
So I'll share that when I came and looked at this, I'm not a history buff. That's not where I would spend my time reading. But I was a little lost in the TCI. Like, I really was enjoying everything that I was reading. I think I apologize. I'm like, oh, did you know? I'm like, of course, should have probably remembered that. But it was really engaging, and I enjoyed that. So I'm a little sad that it's not the recommendation all the way back to kindergarten, because I did appreciate the elementary portion of that curriculum too. But I trust all of your things. Will somebody remind me quick what the other curriculum we piloted for the elementary was? Was there another one? No? Okay, so on the Inquire one, we did have some stakeholder feedback too about some of those different extensions and learning opportunities. So it's not really a question, but just a comment that we can go in and take access away from some of those extensions too, so that if there is something that is either not legal in Iowa to share with students or doesn't fit or maybe is a little controversial, there will not be access to those. And so just perfect. Yep. Sorry, I just wanted to say that out loud so it doesn't.
Yeah, we agree with you. We've been assured by the representatives from Inquire Ed that we have the ability to pick and choose different lessons and activities if there is a question of legislation or anything like that.
I have a question with the AP area of things. Pardon me. What you're showing here, of course, is because that's the one in particular with the psychology, and it's not up to that standard. Does that mean, will there be other type of ones that will be coming down the pike that may not be up to the AP standards that we're going to have to also start including? And then what kind of cost factor does that get us for doing that?
So the College Board, I wish that they had more of a regular curriculum update or review cycle. We can go and look at what's upcoming maybe in the next 4 to 6 years. Off the top of my head, that's the most pertinent one for us in our department. Yeah, but I guess I would recommend kind of looking at what College Board has rolled out. Like, for example, we just updated in AP Human Geography, so we're current there. We're current in AP Psychology, and we're current in AP Micro and Macro, but we're not offering those courses next year. So and AP US History, we just updated AP US History, so I think we're covered. AP Government was shortly before that. Psychology was kind of the last in the changes from College Board to require an update in the text. Most often, if they do update the CED, you can keep your same text. It's not such a significant change that you have to go buy a new textbook. That's typically, that is about an every 6 to 8 year process, kind of like our curriculum review. And we are current on all of our other materials except for psychology. AP Micro and Macro is the only one we haven't updated in the last decade, but that's not a course that we're offering next year. So that's why we didn't look at an update to the Micro and the Macro. Does that answer your question?
No, yes, it does
okay,
very
good.
well.
Yeah, I wish the College Board were more regular and we knew exactly when they're going to change things, but we don't foresee another big change that would require a textbook change in the next 6 years until we adopt again.
Rachel, you kind of hit on it a little earlier. There wasn't a one-size-fits-all for K through 12. But when going through these selections, I'm assuming cost-wise, similar cost per these programs, or wasn't? If for 50/50
I'm really
on
grateful
a
that they
program.
didn't tell us how much any of them cost, so we could just, evaluate them objectively.
That's
so,
great,
yeah.
but I still have a concern on cost. If we're 50/50 borderline on something, then what is significant cost difference? And I'm hoping we're going to include that. in
Yeah,
consideration.
I actually, I don't tell the teachers
Right,
cost
I
ahead of
can
time
understand.
because I don't want that to be a factor in the process. But going through, getting quotes that we've been getting, again, they're very similar. There's not one that's like way higher than another one.
I can roll with that. Thank you.
I have a couple concerns, and I've talked to teachers in the board office and many people about it, but I'm wondering if it's and this is financial as well, but is it necessary to adopt a K-3 curriculum when it integrates so closely with our CKLA, and then we could do the supplements if needed, try it for a year, and I just feel like we are really trying to retain teachers, we're trying to save money, we're trying to do a lot of things like that, and having taught, maybe that's why it's close to my heart, but I think we're putting more on the plate. Adopting a ELA curriculum is a huge undertaking, huge, and this is a great curriculum. I have had very few, I've subbed and taught it, I think it's wonderful, but I also think it integrates science, social studies, and I think we could really pull it off effectively, save money, lighten the load on teachers for in-services and PD. I just think all the way around, if we could, I don't want to say dump K-3 and do it through CKLA, it would be benefit across.
Right, and so I kind of have two responses to that. The first one, we did talk with the kindergarten and first grade teachers, and we actually had a pretty long discussion about this. So the opportunity is there for K-1 teachers to use it as a resource because the units do coincide quite nicely with CKLA. So we also know that the instructional time in K-1 is a little bit tighter just with naturally K-1 students. So for social studies, they will be using it in kindergarten and first grade more as a resource to help support their work. As far as second through fifth grade, in our meetings and so forth, we made a decision based on feedback from the teachers who piloted. We will be using it as a social study, their main social studies curriculum, and during those instructional minutes. But I will say that the second part to that is that we did talk about that quite a bit. CKLA is not written, though, to meet all of the social studies standards. We did actually talk quite in length with CKLA and Amplify about that exact question. I also met with some other school districts that were using the curriculums and just got feedback from them as well. Also in meeting with the teachers, there were kind of two, as with anything, two different lenses. Some teachers feel very strongly about having social studies and materials and things that they can use for a resource. Other teachers maybe feel less that way and would like to just use them as a supplementary program. So all teachers will be given the social studies curriculum in K-1. They have been told they can use it as a resource to help, supplement those units. And as I think Stacy might have said, it will be on our, we are required to report on social studies standards and teach them by the state. And so we will go ahead and move forward with that.
Because when I'm looking, I have the K-3 standards here, and there's 6 standards, and they seem pretty compatible to CKLA. I know you are the expert, but I also think spending this much money for these things to sit on a shelf and people to find their own supplements and use them is not very responsible on our part.
And I would say, before we went through this adoption, they did have resources, and the request came from a lot of teachers wanting to have a curriculum, but I do understand there are two sides to that.
It seems like I've talked to several K-2, not as many 3, but a few 3s, and I guess that isn't what I heard, but.
Yeah.
So as a kindergarten teacher, one thing that I would add to that is I agree that it does definitely align very well and they will flow together. We do have a meeting that we're having, I believe, in June, where we're going to talk about how we can make sure that those are lining up appropriately. But I think one really positive thing to consider in that, we're learning those things through CKLA, which is amazing, and the kids are responding so well, and they love learning those social studies skills. But I think having that social studies curriculum is going to really help us add to that inquiry process to teach those kids those skills as well, because that is something that isn't necessarily inside of that social studies curriculum. So I get what you're saying, and we agree. There is a lot of alignment there, but I do think there is a lot of positive in having that inquiry-based approach as well.
And I understand that. I just feel like there's inquiry-approached supplements that we could get that would be a lot more cost-effective than buying the whole curriculum for K3 or 2 or wherever we're at, K1, and not utilizing 80% of it.
Yeah, it's good to have those opportunities that we have to, especially, like, it's easy for me to say as a very experienced teacher that that's something that maybe we don't need, but it's also good for our new teachers to the district to know, to have good approaches for how to teach those things too.
Which I totally understand from my years of teaching, but I also feel like it's also overwhelming to have so many resources with a new ELA and then a new social studies, and I know we're pushing math back a little bit, but at some point I think we need to look at the most efficient way, and that's cost efficient and teacher efficiency to meet the standards. So that's just my opinion. Obviously, not the same as everyone else's, but I think it maybe should, I don't know. I feel like it's a waste of resources in some ways.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, team. Thank you for the updates.
And John, I do just want to say again, thank you to the team and to all the teachers as the amount of time that's put in. This adoption process is intensive, but it also, I mean, and you could, I'm sure Joelle would agree with this, it's a whole lot easier if we just picked, here's what you're going to do, right? And you're all going to do the same thing. But one of the things we continue to hear is teacher voice and input into the process. And there was a lot of community voice and input. And all of that helps guide, you know, what we do and how we move forward. And we learn from that. And so it is a really important process, starting with exactly knowing the process, going into those ed reports, ensuring they're, you know, highly rated. And then you guys have done a great job really digging into that. These are not easy conversations. Obviously, you guys were here a lot of nights digging into that. So ultimately making sure that teachers have had input into the process and we're selecting the best piece for our students moving forward. So thank you again.
Thank you. Yeah, moving forward, the next item on our agenda is our superintendent updates.
Well, I'm going to keep this really brief on my half. It is School Board Recognition Month, and so we're very fortunate to have Tammy Drawbaugh here from the Iowa Association of School Boards. And again, each year we spend some time just saying thank you to you as a board. I know that the community doesn't always see the amount of time and energy that you put into things. And again, we're lucky that Tammy's been a part of this district and part of this board and now is serving boards across the state. So really appreciate her being here tonight to also be a part of this.
Thank you, Clint. I promised I would make this short, and I looked at your agenda, friends. You have a big agenda. So, but thank you for letting me come and do this. It's especially important to me because you all are my home district. I typed up some notes so that I could stay on task for you, but on behalf of the Iowa Association of School Boards, we want to celebrate you all. May is School Board Appreciation Month, and it's a time to recognize you, the dedicated individuals who play a vital role in shaping our children's futures. This year's theme is Propelling Students to New Heights. It beautifully captures the essence of your service. School board members are elected representatives entrusted with two of our community's most valuable assets, students and taxpayer dollars. You represent a continuing commitment to local decision-making and public education. Notably, your volunteer time you receive no compensation for that commitment. I think of school board members as the architect. You are setting the vision and the direction for the district. Your superintendent and your staff, they become the builders. They are implementing those plans on the front lines of the classroom. We just heard about that tonight. Together, you make an impactful team. Your role as a board member is more than 17, 18, who's counting, meetings a year. When you come and you sit together, gavelled in, making decisions at this table together. It's more than preparation for those meetings, attending events such as graduation and district celebrations. It's also pursuing your own professional development through IASB and advocating at a state level. And it's more than being stopped by community members at the grocery store, the gas station, when you're out to dinner with a significant other and you're looking for a quiet evening, or you're attending an event of a student or a family member and you make time for that conversation. Being a school board member is no small feat. The dedication you all bring to the Muscatine Community School District and the community as a whole is inspiring. While words can't fully express my gratitude to each of you, I'm going to use a resource that I share that I think captures the essence of your service. This is a book called The School Board Member's Guidebook, Becoming a Difference Maker in Your District. It's written by Ryan Donnellan and Todd Whitaker, and I'm going to guess my friends in education will recognize those names. I see heads nodding, as they do a lot of writing. So I'm going to use their words tonight as a thank you. You are a school board member. Whether recently elected or appointed, or now enjoying decades of quality service, you have one of the most important professional responsibilities imaginable. Consider the fact that every time you go to the doctor for a checkup, or go to the life insurance agent to purchase a policy that will protect your family, or visit a lawyer to protect your interests in case of an accident or injury, or entrust your safety to a police officer or a firefighter, you are meeting with someone who you had a difference made in their lives because of someone like you, someone on a school board. Every patriot fighting in our military, every farmer producing food for developing nations, every volunteer helping serve those less fortunate in your community, as well as those investing in the stock market or providing the infrastructure and services to grow our economy, relied upon a quality school experience to get them there. All who are successful today, or at least most of them, were given the skills to accomplish those feats in school. Folks like yourself were there in governance roles, serving in many instances without the visibility of those in classrooms or leadership capacities, yet in ways that without your selfless service, quality classrooms and schools wouldn't be possible. Your governance is crucial. Serving as an effective, proactive, and responsible school board member allows you a positive difference in the lives of those who depend upon you, today's children, tomorrow's adults, and the adults who are educating your children towards a better place in life. And it doesn't end there. The call of board service is in reality a larger investment in one's community. Schools are the second reason, beyond the job, why families relocate to a certain area. Your service on a school board helps answer the question, what kind of community are we? Not only within your schools, but beyond the school walls as well. You are the person who makes that difference. You are all difference makers, and for that, I am very grateful. I would ask that you all join me in just giving them a round of applause for all the service and work that they do. And you each have beautifully done certificates that I did not take, cannot take any credit, but Daphne has for you and that have been signed by Clint. I will let you hand it out.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay, moving forward with our agenda items, we move into the action, possible action. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. The items are 1, minutes, 2, employment recommendations, 3, bills and claims, 4, policies, no, minimal required by law, 5, student teaching agreement with University of Iowa, 6, MBA Drivers Education 2025-26 contract, and 7, Memo of Understanding for IJAC 912 program and middle school program. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, those of you who are in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. So this will take us to item I, is to approve the amended FY24 budget. What are the wishes of the board?
Second?
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the amended FY24 budget, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. So the next item is to approve the purchase of a scoreboard for the MHS pool from Colorado Time Systems in the amount of $80,470. What are the wishes of the board?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor
See, a
of...
majority of this funding was donations, is that correct? Yep, donations to the Manta Rays and the Kent Corporation, so the only cost of this total $80,470 is $15,000 out of the PPE fund?
Yeah, the activity fund will cover some, and then the physical plant and equipment levy is covering some of that.
But out of the 80,000, the only portion we're covering is
What was it for the
15.
couple? Was
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's 15.
Yep. Yep. So it's coming from different sources. Well,
Thank you for the Manta Rays and the Kent Foundation
Yes.
for supporting that.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of approving the purchase of a scoreboard for the MHS pool from Colorado Time Systems in the amount of $80,470, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. So next item is to approve the change order for the Muscatine CSD Center project to Rock River Electric in the amount of $116,800. What are the, I'm sorry.
I'll make the motion.
I'm sorry, I got stuck, so, okay, we have a motion? Thank you. I'm sorry, okay, do I have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second, any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Nienhouse, come on up on this one and the next one. It's pretty significant change request, and just how did we get here? How, with Russell's activity and others, was this missed in the bid process?
Well, I would say with the first one, it all revolves around the fire panel, which we knew was going to be an issue in tearing that out. The fire panel there, we didn't know if it could be reused. So after they looked into that, basically it's very antiquated. So in order to keep that, we would have to keep the same sensors that we would have now, which again are very antiquated. They're not up to right. So it turned, and they actually put in an allowance of like 35,000 in the budget already for that. We just didn't know what so Russell kind of planned it for a little bit, but we didn't know what the entire cost would be. Well, once we found out we had to basically replace the whole system and the panel and all the sensors, everything basically new, that's why the cost went up to that.
This is a question for the next line item too, I think. Where are we at in contingencies? Are they gone?
No, well, I mean, not quite. I mean, not quite. Depending on what happens here, I would say yes, obviously, we would still have a little bit after this 115 because 35,000 was an allowance, and then we had a pretty big contingency budget. But I can get those numbers and send them to you exactly. But the next one, obviously, would wipe out the rest of our contingency and some.
Well, and some of the questions might be answered too when we get to finance, but I've just noticed some things coming out of like the PEPAL fund instead of either like 33 or 34, so. When's the appropriate time? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second and discussion. All those in favor of approving the change order for the Muscatine CSD Center project to Rock River Electric in the amount of $116,057, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. Moving forward is to approve the Muscatine CSD Center project change order to D.W. Zinzer, not to exceed $406,938,000. What are the wishes of the board?
So move.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And now, is there any more contingency fund left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was a big one. You know, this has been kind of it's kind of like poison ivy, asbestos. It's kind of, you get rid of it and then it shows up somewhere else. So basically, you know, I think Clint's, you know, kind of talked about this a little bit. Basically, what this is doing is it's treating the whole building as possibly having asbestos. So that changes the demolition and where they're taking all the rubble. We had a landowner that we were filling a ravine that's local, and we still may be able to do that, but they just don't know yet. But basically, they gotta line all their trucks with plastic, fill up anything that would appear to have asbestos, and now it has to be transported to like Milan or Moline. So the costs, you can see, you know, they're gonna take out thousands and thousands of pounds of things out of there, so you can see how the cost could get pretty high pretty quickly. Now, I will say there is a little bit of a silver lining in this. The Zinzer has agreed to do whatever they can to separate any material that we know for a fact is not going to have asbestos. So the concrete floors, beams, things like that, they are going to still take that to their local landowner or the landfill, and anything that, you know, the problem is we get into the interior walls and you just don't know. what you're gonna get. So, you know, this came about because of the window caulking from the original windows, you know, from 1939, you know, and so the caulking never came out when they replaced the windows. Well, in the inside of the building, we may find more and more of that. So this would delay the process, obviously, of tearing it down. But once we get this, you know, if we did go ahead and abate those windows, and then that's going to take up to a month, and they start tearing down walls, they'll stop immediately if they suspect anything. So then we got to get it tested, which takes 2 or 3 days. Then we would have to have it abated again. And so you can see this could just keep dragging out on and on. We don't know what that cost would be. It's too hard to predict. So this, doing it like this, treating the whole building as hot, kind of allows us to proceed. And also, the cost could be $1 million to abate it too. We just don't know. You know, so this $406,000 kind of covers the whole building. Now, back to the silver lining, if you know, they're saying that if they can take 7,000 or 10,000 tons to the local ravine that they're dumping, the clean fill, that could save us up to 65, 75, 85, 95,000. So there's a possibility that it's not going to get to the 406,000 too.
Chris, if the board approved this, everything, the projects will continue as we know, like it's nothing gonna stop it or delay the process.
Yeah, nothing, I don't foresee any more delays. Now, you never know when they start taking down the building, but as far as asbestos go and stopping, yeah, there's no more delays. And they're willing, they've been stopped now for, you know, a week and a half, 2 weeks, and so Zinser said they will get going tomorrow again if this is approved.
I assume this means then when it comes to looking at what we need to do for the theater, that's something we may have to be cautious on as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, depending on what we do, you know, if we're knocking down walls or you know, remodeling per se, you know, yeah, that we would have to look at, you know, abatement of those, or, you know, testing and abatement if that happened. But it just kind of depends on what the scope that we decide to do is too, that we're working on. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Chris, has Russell been handling all of like the vendor selections? I don't know if vendor is the right word in this, but when they're picking the people that are coming in and doing these things, like, are they doing all of that, or do you feel like it takes a lot of your time as well?
Yeah, the abatement and asbestos has been kind of separated from the contracts, so I've been kind of handling most of that. But they're really good about, hey, you know, we exchange numbers with the people that we contact, and then they kind of take it over after a little while. But it, you know, it is what it is. It's not bad.
I think the lesson learned coming out of this too is, as you stated earlier, was our possibly bidding these hot from now on, just to clearly understand what the potential cost could be for destruction of buildings, because we have older buildings within this district, and if we go through something like this again, that we
no, I agree.
bid it hot, so we're not in the middle of it and getting this bill.
Right. I have an alternate in there of if this, you know, if we do start finding it, we may have to turn it to that alternate. But yeah, I agree. We should probably have that up front so we don't get
Corrective action that you stated.
surprised a little bit. Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, well, all those in favor of approving the Muscatine CSD Central Project Change Order to D.W. Zinser not to exceed $406,938. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Chris. So moving forward, we move into our next item on our agenda is to approve the 2024-2025 salary adjustment agreement with the Muscatine Education Association as per the negotiated settlement of 3.75%. What are the wishes of the board?
So moved. Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the 2024-2025 salary adjustment agreement with the Muscatine Education Association as per the negotiated settlement of 3.75%, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. The next item is to approve the 2024-2025 salary adjustment of 3% for the classified, certified professional employees. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the 2024-25 salary adjustment of 3% for classified non-certified professional employees.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the 2024-2025 salary adjustment of 3% for the classified certified professional employees, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, thank you. So moving forward, we move into item O on our agenda, which is to approve the resolution of certification to appoint a delegate and alternate to carry the power to cast all of the board's weighted voting power to elect a director to the Mississippi Bend AEA Board of Directors, District 8. What are the wishes of the board?
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? My understanding that we basically need to select one and one alternate. My understanding also they participate in one meeting. Daphne, do you know the date of that meeting? Please?
It's Tuesday, May 21st at 3 in the afternoon, and you can go in person, and it will also be available. There'll be a Zoom meeting, so you can attend.
Any more questions about that?
I can do it.
Yeah, if anybody would wish to do that, we need one and an alternate, one delegate and an alternate.
Right, we need a delegate and an alternate, and, right, it's a special election, so the timeline is, everything needs to be turned in by Friday. They've been reaching out to me. I said we had a meeting tonight, so we were hoping to have a delegate tonight.
We need, yeah, to know because we need to.
We don't have any volunteers. It'll be eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Lindsay wants to volunteer?
I nominate Lindsay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Lindsay as a volunteer. Do we, as a delegate, we need also an alternate?
Yes, I am not the candidate.
No.
No, we need an alternate.
I guess alternate.
Okay,
I'm
so,
not going to be sick, Karen. It'll be okay.
okay, so thank you to both of you. So all those in favor of nominating Lindsay as a delegate and Karen as an alternate to represent our school board and vote and have the voting power to elect a director to the Mississippi Bend AEA Board of Directors, District 8. Please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Okay, congratulations to both of you. Okay, moving forward, we move into next item to approve the purchase of student Chromebooks in the amount of $486,125.03. What are the wishes of the board?
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. I see Scott here is ready to take any of your questions.
Quick question. I see on the one, there was like a Acer or Dell, and we selected Acer, but is that the majority of them already on the Acer or Dell, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter too much to us. About last year was the first year we've gone into the Acer. So, I mean, I don't want to get too crazy with you on the technical stuff here, but last year Dell didn't have two USB-C ports. And so that's what we charge them with, and our thought was if a student damages that USB-C port, we won't be able to charge it, and we'll have to send it in. So it was really important to us to have 2 USB-C ports, which this year Dell has gone back. They heard from their customers that they needed that.
Yep.
So they're back on the market, which is why we considered them again this year.
But satisfied so far with the
Yeah,
Azers?
they've been great.
Thank you.
And just to refresh you, we come back every year. We started replacing these for grades 2, 9th, and 2nd, 6th, and 9th. And this year, we're doing kindergarten as well, which is what the touchscreen Chromebooks are at the bottom there. Those will replace our iPads. We talked to our kindergarten teachers and asked if that was something that they would be interested in entertaining, and they overwhelmingly seem to support that. So that's what we will be doing this summer. And we were a little more proactive this year. We're coming to you in May instead of June, because it used to be that we could get those ordered right away in June and have them in July, but the last few years with product delivery the way they are, we've been getting them in August. So we're trying to get them back into that July timeframe to give us more time to work.
I have a question, and it may not be for you, Scott, it'd probably be for Joelle or Clint. I've been in a couple classrooms where, you know, students have used one-finger approaches or pencils or to enter their data. I just have a concern that we're spending $500,000 and we're not teaching students correctly, you know, to enter data. I mean, somewhere along the line, we have to, you know, teach them on a keyboard or something. I know we do some programming, but to do it correctly and more efficiently, I guess. So, I don't know, Joelle or Clint or?
I think that has continued to be a challenge. I can tell you, you know, many moons ago when I was teaching, you know, we had a computer lab. And so we sent kids there, and that was a whole section of their, you know, that was a whole class period that they worked on keyboarding, and that's pretty much all they worked on, right? And, you know, obviously, kids have access to technology a lot sooner and are coming in with those skills from home, and then not having dedicated computer lab time, and as you know, there's a lot of other requirements there that it's been something that's kind of fallen further and further away. This is something I've talked with Joelle about. You know, there are programs that, you know, you can look at, online programs that can do it, and some of that is just really working with teachers and with our buildings to determine when's the best time to do that and when would they do that.
Yeah, I
don't
want to pile anything more on the teachers, you know, as far as more curriculum items, but, you know, I guess in the past, when I brought this up, someone was saying about Muscatine or whatever like that, and that's, you know, that's just an added burden onto the teachers. I think that somewhere along the line in the 4th or 5th grade, you know, would be an ideal time to do something. You know, I'm not saying have a dedicated curriculum, but they need to have some kind of formal tutorial or something. So at least they have some kind of basics.
And that's something we'll continue to talk about. You keep kind of like half popping up, so you're welcome to come up, but yeah, it is something we're gonna need to continue to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you come up with, this is another shoot, sorry. Do you come up with the same proposals for like ordering the headphones that accompany these?
I do not, no.
Okay.
Typically, I think the headphones we purchase are during the start of the school year at the elementary level. And then like I think for ISASP testing, the high school may purchase some for those students that need them for that.
The quality of those is pretty
Right,
subpar.
sometimes the quality can be pretty, you know, they don't stand up to elementary student
Right.
abuse very, very well.
But you hate to put too much money in because it's not going to matter.
It's difficult,
Some
right?
of those
Plus they
things,
can't
Yeah.
utilize, I mean, there's so many kids that aren't even able to do like Boost, for example. They have to have headphones on or it is the most distracting thing ever. And so we're maybe making it like a month into school before those are all breaking. So maybe just something to think about. I don't know if there's package deals.
Any other question? Okay, all those in favor of approving the purchase of student Chromebooks in the amount of $486,125.03, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, motion carried. So the next item is to approve the purchase of 150 MacBooks for teachers in the amount of $146,850. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or any question for Scott as he's still with us?
So what we were thinking, 2 years ago when we replaced our teacher MacBooks, we did them all at once. So we purchased 450 all together, which is how we had done it prior to that. I think the board asked us 2 years ago, hey, have you considered like developing a replacement plan with smaller quantities and to make that budget item a little bit more easy to swallow? So this year, so basically what we did is we looked at, we're 2 years into that now. If we start replacing these at 150 per the next 3 years, we'll be able to get those onto 4-year replacement plans at that smaller quantity.
Are these the ones you're returning?
I'm sorry?
Do you return these when they buy them back, or is there?
Yeah, so whenever we sell devices, we sell them in lots, like the entire thing. And so in the past, we've known like we get a much greater resale value from our teacher laptops than we do from our Chromebooks. So we're expecting a decent return on these.
We just return those back, or we just a trade-in, is that what it is?
No.
We resell them to somebody else?
We put a bid out, we advertise in the paper, we sell them all at once. And then we have vendors from all over the country. It's kind of like storage wars. It's very interesting.
And Scott, because these are relatively newer computers, we'll get a higher price than if they were 5 or 6 years old. Compared to a Chromebook where the starting price isn't all that high, by the time we get done with them, we use them for parts and if they're still good.
Right.
But the MacBooks certainly are a different computer.
They hold their value very well.
Any more discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the purchase of 150 MacBooks for teachers in the amount of $146,850, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Thank you, Scott. Yeah. The next item on our agenda is one of my favorite items usually every year in May since I became a school board member 9 years ago. The next item is to approve the tentative MHS class of 2024 graduates. What are the wishes of the board?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
What is the number of that?
384 this year. Daphne counted for me. And Daphne also looked up last year, it was 361. So we do have a few more in there. I do know we have a couple of juniors, or like there's 22, I think, juniors who are graduating early in this group as well.
The
Any other
weather looks
questions?
promising for Sunday.
Let's not talk about it. I had Rotary today, and I mentioned, and now I look at the outlook, and it's getting a little sketchier, but we're just not going to talk about it. It's going to be fine.
This is always a great news and good outcomes that we deal with as a school district. But anyway, all those in favor of approving the tentative MHS class of 2024 graduates, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, thank you. Congratulations to all graduates too. The next item is discussion and information, and I see Tom is ready for us to go over April financials.
So tonight is the April financials. Everything's been reconciled and presented tonight, and you see some comparisons to the last month as well as the same period last year. So tonight we had the public hearing to amend the budget, so thank you very much for that. And then you can see our timeline for our agenda items, finance-wise, kind of isn't as heavy the next few months, but please don't think that things are not happening in the finance department during that time because it is the end of our fiscal year. So I don't have any specific comments on any of the pages of what I've been presenting. I know there was a question about some bills on the bills list this month. So keep in mind, we have 3 capital project funds. The SAVE fund, which is basically the local option sales tax. Fund 36, which is PEPL, the physical plant and equipment levy, the tax levy. And then we have the revenue bond fund. And so the revenue bond fund, I try to make sure we just keep the like architect, engineering, and the construction contracts, and then change orders that might happen or whatever. I know for a couple of the projects going on, there ends up being extra things that start happening that are beyond the construction or the what went out for bid and everything. So there is in Fund 36, there is a general construction budget, I guess, that some of those expenses are coming out of. I think the concession stand, there's some equipment and such, and that is being taken out of Fund 36. So it's not, yeah.
Dug out in concession stuff.
So, and then I just will kind of, not to prolong my report, but I just wanted to make sure you knew that with the sale of all the computers, since we do know that we purchased those out of capital projects, we have to deposit that money back into Fund 36. So the numbers you see on there, on those last 2 line items for the computers, you know, we'll end up getting revenue back into capital projects to offset that. But we do budget every year $500,000–600,000 out of capital projects for technology. So that is all I have for now. So if you don't have any questions, that is it.
The additional contingencies coming up out of the previous ones, any concern with that?
I don't. I do get all the pay applications every month from the construction manager, so that is one line that is in Fund 34 as a purchase order for that contingency. So I don't yet, but I don't think I've seen this come through on a pay app yet, but so I'm not going to raise any red flags right now. So.
Any other question for Tom? Okay, thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, the next item is the first reading of policies 502.5, student drug, tobacco, alcohol offenses. And the second item is 503.7, student complaints and grievances. Any question about either or?
Are they swapped? The purchase and bidding is in place of the student complaints and grievances. Were there any changes on that, or is it what's posted already? Sorry,
No, that's okay. The one about bidding, that was like a minimal under the law. So did I have a?
Right, so the
in the wrong place?
503.7, student complaints and grievances, that link takes you to that.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I will fix that.
7.3.
Oh,
So were there,
So
but
you
were there
haven't seen it?
changes to that?
yes, and
Oh.
that's why it's under the first reading.
Oh.
So you'll see it, I will get it to you right now, but that's why it's under that first reading, so you get to see it a couple more times. So I apologize for the wrong link.
Any other question? Thank you. So item C is the second reading of policies 506.15, parent and family engagement. And the second item is 506.15R1, parent and family engagement, administrative regulations. Any question about either or as the second reading? And as I always say, you can connect with Daphne if you have any question, not necessarily just during our meeting. So you can connect with her and ask her any question if you do have any question. So with that, we move into item D, which is the announcements, meetings, and events. May 14th, grand opening of Tom Bruner Field and ribbon cutting. Bob Leach Press Box at 4:30 p.m. Tom Bruner Field, 2136 Oneida Avenue in Muscatine. May 15th will be the last school day for seniors. May 19th, MHS class of 2024 graduation at 2 p.m. May 23rd, Project Search graduation, 6 p.m. at the Rendezvous 3127 Lucas Street. And May 28th, the MCSD retirement celebration at 4 p.m. Same place at the Rendezvous 3127 Lucas Street. May 29, students' last day, 2-hour early dismissal. June 3rd, the grand opening, Muskie softball field, ribbon cutting for our friend here, Denny Sure, press box dedication at 4:45 p.m., which is on the 2705 Cedar Street in Muscatine. June 4th, MCSD and River Bend Food Bank. We have here to mention that because that day will be the primary election, so the food bank will not happen at that day, June 4th. So somehow, I think Daphne and the district office will come up with a different date and will let everybody knows about when is the MCSD River Bend Food Bank during the month of June. And June 10th, our regular board meeting at 6:15 here at the MCSD Admin Center. And remember, next month, June and July, we will not have community conversation. So we will have only the board meeting. Any other items to add to this list? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Okay, well, thank you, and we'll see you next month.